Hello ladies, gents, and non-binary mates, and welcome back to Beauty in the Bookcase, where we take a book and we make a look. Now, before we get started, make sure you follow me here, and right over here, so you can keep up with everything I'm doing whenever I'm not on YouTube. So today is all about the book Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. So Daniel Quinn was actually born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1935, and his work kind of ranges from cultural critiques to educational textbooks and, of course, novels. And his most famous work is actually the 1992 release of Ishmael. So Ishmael actually earned him the Turner Tomorrow Fellowship Award because it proposed such positive solutions to a problem. So a lot of his work, starting with this book, well, I don't know if it's starting, but definitely involving this book, had to do with ecology and the whole idea of protecting the environment. So he kind of created this mythology of man as a way to sort of explain how we've got here. And so he took that and turned it into a trilogy, starting with Ishmael, going on to the story of B, and eventually My Ishmael. So it all starts with the line, "Teacher seeks pupil." This line actually stands out to the narrator as he is kind of perusing the newspaper in search of, the meaning of life, like the rest of us. So the ad actually leads straight to a gorilla by the name of Ishmael, who happens to be able to communicate telepathically with people, and he's there to sort of teach the narrator what kind of the purpose of man is, and to sort of explain this idea of the mythology of man. And, Ishmael has a lot to say about the way we as people have been living for so many years, and he really wants the narrator to figure out for himself how things came to be this way. That is the main question that he is asking throughout the novel, and the main question he's hoping our narrator will be able to answer once their time together is done. That said, like any good teacher, Ishmael is not going to make it easy, and he's not just going to give us the answer, he's not going to give it to the narrator either. So he gives him essentially like these tasks, like weekly tasks, basically homework, to see if he can slowly put the story together. And really his main goal through these like little assignments that he gives the narrator is to get him to really be introspective and have a look at the way that our culture, which he calls the taker culture, has been living for so long, and he just wants him to be able to see like why it's not working, and it's not going to work forever. So even if it is okay now, it's going to cause issues in the long run. So Ishmael is really a story about evolution. Are humans really the end of evolution, or are we actually just the end of everything as we know it? So, as I said, the main reason our characters kind of come together is because the narrator is kind of just in search of a purpose for his life, kind of meaning. He's not really interested in his work, and, he's kind of overcome with this general sense of dread and apathy that I have come to assume is just adulthood. And, meeting Ishmael just really feels to him like that's one step towards something a bit more meaningful. I mean, I'm sure at the start, it partially, at least, must have been out of curiosity, right? I mean, if you walked into an office building after responding to a personal ad, well, in today's day and age, you'd probably get murdered. But back in the day, when things weren't as insane, if you walked into an office building after answering a personal ad and there was just like a giant gorilla in the room, would you not stay, even just out of curiosity, even if you thought it was going to be complete nonsense or some weird like parlor trick? I'm sure we'd all stay. And it's kind of through these conversations that it starts to become clear to our narrator that maybe the stuff we've all been taught isn't exactly the truth. We've all been taught either directly or indirectly that, man is kind of evolution's last hurrah, right? We were the reason for the planet being created, and we're kind of in charge of it, and we're top dog or whatever. However, if we gave this answer to Ishmael, he'd most likely hit us over the head with like a little stick of bamboo, because that is apparently wrong. One of the really major things that this book wants us to understand is, what is the purpose of man? I mean, some insects pollinate, plants give us oxygen, and we create pollution and destroy the planet? I don't know. If we're being completely frank, we kind of wreck the planet. That's what we've done so far. But I will say, it's not necessarily that Ishmael is entirely critical. You know, he doesn't think that everything we've done is terrible. He has the ability to sort of like, you know, laud the progress that we've made since, you know, we were closer relatives to chimps than he is, but we kind of just never knew where to stop. We just became greedy because we saw the earth and we just went like, yep, this is mine, this is my property, so I can do whatever I want with it. We just presumed that because we're the only creatures with opposable thumbs and the ability to communicate in, I guess, a language, the universe must have been that the earth must have been created for us. But in Ishmael's eyes, it seems that man didn't quite get the memo of why we're even here. So if we're not meant to take everything for ourselves as top dogs of the evolutionary chain, then what are we doing here? What's the point? Well, Ishmael just invites us to be peacekeepers and guides for all other, you know, much more evolved species. And no, he doesn't go as far as being like, you know, stop eating animals and collecting plants. It's not that exaggerated. He's not really asking us to stop. He's just asking us to dial it down a bit. You know, he really just wants us to know that, as we'd say in my country, we're not the last Coke in the desert, so, you know, maybe we should stop acting like it. He really wants us to understand that we have a responsibility towards the earth to rejoin the community. And the best way that we can do that is by creating an environment that is still competitive, but isn't prioritizing one species over another. So really, going back to the incredible amounts of shade that Ishmael throws our way, the main point is, man thinks he's all that in a bag of chips, but he's not. Now, while the idea of man as inherently good isn't, you know, this revolutionary and new concept, Ishmael kind of wants us to think about the fact that if we do have the capacity as, you know, the most advanced species to not be an asshole, we've kind of consistently chosen to be an asshole. He argues that, you know, to an extent, we've almost used this as a crutch, you know? We've just went like, well, A, we're, you know, the best creation in the world, so screw you. But also, you know, we're imperfect, but it's fine. It's like cute. It's not cute. And really, this all boils down to two major things: ego and greed. I mean, man is so obsessed with himself that when presented with the, you know, absolutely horrible, greedy things that we've done, instead of actually reflecting on them and, I don't know, changing, we just kind of go like, the world is ours anyway, so we're gonna do what we want, you know, like a spoiled brat. And Ishmael really wants to like break this down or really get it in our heads, right? So he decides to sort of do this role-playing exercise with the narrator where the narrator is forced to take on the role of the takers. Ishmael is on the side of the leavers, and he just really wants him to explain the Industrial Revolution up to the point we've gotten to, and like, why. So, you know, like I said, the whole point of this exercise is to really force the narrator to think about whether the Industrial Revolution really was as great as we make it out to be. And yeah, listen, I don't think it's an argument of like having trains is bad and technology is bad, but more so the fact that we just kind of fell into the convenience of it all and got a little out of hand. We kind of just domesticated the earth for ourselves and, you know, went a little nuts with it. And it's through this exercise, while he's trying to explain taker culture to the leavers, and the leavers kind of respond with logic, that our narrator starts to see the absurdity of the way that we live and the way that we behave. For the leavers, you know, every time that it's kind of like, well, what do you do if you want to have an apple? Well, I go to an apple tree. Well, what if there's no apples? Well, then I eat a banana. What if there's just like no apples or bananas in the vicinity? Well, I move, right? That was the traditional culture, so to speak. That was the first way that we lived life. So then we kind of got machines and all this stuff, and instead of just taking what we needed, we started hoarding things and taking things in excess to, make it easier, right? I love the fact that supermarkets exist. I would be a terrible hunter if I had to go out there and actually, find my food. So, it's kind of a difficult point to digest, because to an extent you go like, okay, well, how far back are we dialing it back? Because are we really going to go back to everyone grows their own thing? Or is there a way that we can still keep the commodities that we have, but, instead of selling 50,000 chickens, you have something a little bit more contained, a bit more reduced and available to, it just kind of fit for the population. But I think that's kind of part of the point of this story, right? Is to be like, yeah, the right thing isn't necessarily the easy thing. So where do we go? Where is the middle, so that we're not just being like, yeah, we're just going to give everything up? Because that's a bit unrealistic at this, point in time. But we obviously can't keep going the way that we're going, so where is the middle? And I don't think that's necessarily something the book is trying to say, maybe. It made me think about it and kind of where we should be going. But honestly, probably the portion of this book that stuck out the most to me is this section where you have, kind of like the architects of the world, or the gods, so to speak, discussing essentially the idea of who gets to live and who gets to die, right? How do you make it fair? And of course, like with everything in this book, and honestly in life, it's not easy. So these mythical kind of gods are gathered around and focusing on like this big cat and its prey, and trying to decide, right, who is more worthy of living? Who do we spare? And then who has to die? Who gets killed off in the whole chain of things? But the thing is, right, how do you choose who's worthy, How do you measure that? Well, it turns out that the solution to this question is both. Kind of everyone gets to live and everyone has to die. And I know, it sounds really stupid, like, yeah, we're all gonna die, blah, blah, blah. But it's a little bit more nuanced than that. If you ask somebody why we eat chicken, right? They're gonna be like, well, we're smarter than chickens, so yeah, we're both gonna die anyway, but me, as man, evolutionary top dog, I get to live longer than a chicken. And, well, that's kind of right, but also kind of wrong, according to Ishmael. In kind of an attempt to clarify that, no, we don't have to give up everything, Ishmael presents this story to kind of just be like, dude, it's not always going to be your day in the sun, and that's kind of normal. There's days when the gazelle gets to run free and live another day, and the lion kind of has to starve, and then there's days where, the gazelle has to die so that the lion can live. And that's kind of the expectation for everyone. It's not really about creating this perfect world where one species gets everything and, the rest kind of have to suck it up. and bend to their will. It's more so about creating this consistent cycle where we acknowledge the give and take of nature. And I think part of the reason why this stuck out to me so much was because it really clarifies that it's not about giving everything up and altering entirely the way that we live. Granted, we're also a bit more far gone than we were in 1992, so maybe we do have to go a teensy tiny bit more extreme. But really, it's about being considerate of the earth and everyone and everything that we share it with. So, one day we're predator, one day we're prey, but every day we're expected to be peacekeepers. So, what's it all about? Well, at its core, Ishmael is a tale about human mythology, how we came to be, and where we need to go. Although some people might feel that this book is a little bit preachy, I think the power of it lies in the ideas of balance and hope. Ishmael wants us to know that we're not doomed and we're not delegated to some unimportant, lame, boring role in the world. He just wants us to allow enough space for other creatures to evolve and flourish. He wants us to redefine our roles as, going from dominators and owners of the earth to being kind of the moral compass in a way. And he wants to pull us away from that self-centered ideology that we have and, reintegrate us to the community of Earth. So, what did you guys think about this book? Make sure you let me know down in the comments below. As usual, thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, make sure you leave a like and subscribe for more videos like these. Also, make sure you hit that notification bell so you know exactly when I upload next, and I will see you guys next time.